It's time for the debut of Axiom-Acer. They are up against LGIM, a team of champions here at the GSTL on Heart of the Swarm. It's going to be a pretty exciting match for sure coming up now.
It definitely will be. It's going to be really exciting to see that match. We had already a couple of really good matches at the GSTL, but today this is going to be great.
Yeah.
LGIM with so many good players, and especially one player I'm really excited to see today. Seed dropped into Code B in Wings of Liberty, and he immediately installed the client and was completely investing his entire time into Heart of the Swarm, and since then he has been doing great in the new patch.
Yeah, he's looking good, and Seed is really one of those players who's got a really high level of multitasking, so I think using a Heart of the Swarm, he's going to have so many different opportunities to use that multitasking with the Mothership Core, the Oracle, all these new units. And, you know, LGIM is a team of champions in Wings of Liberty, and this is kind of their starting moment for Heart of the Swarm.
I'm really excited for this, not only about Seed, but about all the others, how well they actually transitioned into Heart of the Swarm. From Seed, I expect at least a few wins. He did very, very well in the MLG games that they had just recently in Heart of the Swarm, and of course the same is also true for Axiom-Acer. A great lineup here, and here at the pre-season tournament we'll see some exciting matches for sure.
Here are the results from our previous match, NS Hosa against MVP. They're able to take the series 4-2. Jakji closing it out, doing really well in fact, and basically saw a standard play out of these guys as far as, you know, Heart of the Swarm goes.
Jakji looked really strong, and I can't wait to see him in additional matches next week, when also this week we'll have a lot more games in the GSTL Pre-Season tournament, and this is going to be pretty epic to see how Jakji is doing. I mean, this guy fell off the grid, now he's back with Heart of the Swarm. But here we have one of today's teams. This is LGIM, of course.
Yeah, just getting ready. A little bit of texting going on from Younghwa.
Yeah, Mom, I'll be back for dinner.
I think we'll take him out pretty quick. A bit of a confused face there, but here is the Axiom team, of course, with MMA representing Acer as well, joining them.
I'm really excited to see him today.
Yeah, he better come out, man. No more hiding.
I hope so. Now we definitely need him in the booth. Here we have those teams. LGIM starting off with the roster. Here we have Nestine, we have Ruin, MVP, Bial, Seed, Ragnarok, our starting player today, Younghwa, Yoda, First, and of course MC.
Yeah, try to find a player in that roster who hasn't gotten an all-kill or a GSL championship. There's very few of them. Here is Nesty, the man himself.
Yeah.
Multi-time champion. This team is so strong. They always have the best players results-wise going into the team league. They've had some trouble in the past with team leagues. Maybe they can change that. MC is being the mercenary there, I suppose.
Yeah, yesterday in Code S, spoiler alert, guys. MC did unfortunately not come through. Ro8 defeated him with a 3-2. But here we have Axiom-Acer on the lineup. We have Crank, we have MMA, we have Alicia, also Scarlet, Mia, Hart. And the starting player for Axiom-Acer today is going to be Ryung.
Ryung is a fan favorite, somebody that we all know and love. He's played in so many different individual leagues. He's played in the past for Slayers as well. And now going into this new team, he's got a lot of new opportunities. There's Crank, also a familiar face, but I think everyone's eyes are really going to be on MMA today if he comes out. And you can see his GSL championships there. Standing out. Thank you.
I love that.
Thank you for highlighting that one for me, Crank.
Thank you very, very much. You couldn't have done it any better.
But this is the debut of Axiom-Acer, and this is going to be a really important moment for them to, you know, make a good showing with all these players from Slayers, you know, some meshed together group of players that all came from teamless situations, and it's a solid team. Yeah,
it definitely is, and I'm really interested to see how they are going to do today. Our first match is going to be Ryung versus Ragnarok. That should be a very exciting one. We have a Zerg versus Terran once again. And these days, Zergs are struggling a little bit in Heart of the Swarm. Of course, we are even before the official launch of Heart of the Swarm. The add-on is not out yet. This is one of the pre-patches that we currently have. Hellbats being a little bit of an issue that Blizzard wants to address in the near future. They already announced that there's going to be a patch which make Hellbat available as an upgrade that you can research at the Tech Lab after you build an armory. The patch is not final yet, and it's not included in today's matches.
It's not on that. The patch is not out yet. See, there's a bunch of strong players here. That's basically what this little key matchup thing lists. The roster has 10 GSL championships. I mean, that's That's saying a lot.
Yeah, but on the other hand, you have to also look at the GSTL history of GSTL. I love that. MC going directly to show the pins not only of MVP, but also all the other players. I'm not quite sure if MMA can keep up with that.
Yeah, he has twice as many championships as MMA on his shirt.
But the point that I wanted to make is that even though LGIM has a lot of champions on their roster, and the GSTL, they didn't... Okay, how cool is that? Yeah, in the GSTL, they did not really dominate, as a lot of people expected in none of those seasons in the last year. So this was a little bit weird. A lot of people expected them to do very well and to take at least one championship. It did not happen.
Yeah.
Maybe this season it's going to be different.
This is a really important chance for them. Obviously, we're in the preseason right now, so this does not matter as much as the regular season, which is coming up pretty soon. But this is a good way for them to prove themselves. Maybe put Ro8 out, their new Protoss player, see how he fares in the booth. There's the coach himself.
You want to test the waters, you know, this is a preseason tournament. This gives you the chance to experiment a little bit, give lesser players, younger players, newcomers a bit of a chance here to prove themselves in the booth. And of course for LGIM, it's a test of strength. The coach has been talking about how they really have high hopes for these GSTL seasons that are now coming up, as they didn't do well in 2012 in the Team League. They want to change that. And of course, we also have a team that wants to make history, a new team at the GSTL, Axiom-Acer.
Yeah, Axiom-Acer has a lot of potential with the player list they have. They've got nothing short of talent. And I think that once Scarlet gets here as well, the roster will be even more varied, you know?
That's going to be really interesting to see Scarlet playing here.
Yep. There's a lot of conversation between MMA and Crank. They seem to be really close with each other, and that's always great to have on a team that knows each other well. And all these players have trained together on Slayers anyway, so they have a lot of experience with each other, so the team is very much close-knit, I feel.
Oh yeah, you're definitely right about it. And they have also a really well-rounded lineup. They have a lot of good players in each race that they can use, and that's definitely one of the things that they are going to do. You talked a little bit about Ro8 earlier. I really feel that Ro8 is going to come out today.
Yeah.
That's what you want to do in a preseason tournament. You want to give one of your players that didn't have the experience in their booth the chance to just prove himself, to show his skills and get a bit of experience, just get this nervousness out of the way for the season.
Yep. Crank and of course the LGIM coach coming out. Crank is the player coach for Axiom-Acer, officially listed, so he had to go and shake his hand. But yeah, I think this is the place to give players who don't have that booth experience the experience they need, because this is a really important moment for them to get that experience, not on the big stage where everybody's watching, but on this stage where everybody is actually still watching, but everybody is kind of knowing this is a test period.
And there's Seed, I talked to him earlier and he was pretty unhappy. I talked to him and he's like, I'm so sad that I'm now in Code B again. I can't believe it. And I just talked a little bit about Heart of the Swarm with him, and he really feels that he's doing very well in Heart of the Swarm. He's training a lot, you can see it in his results. So I expect a lot from him, not only in today's GSTL match, but also within the next few weeks and months. It's going to be interesting to see if he's going all the way up to the top again, or if he will struggle.
Yeah, this is a new game. This is a transition period that everyone is going with right now, whether they have to play in the up and downs before they go into Code S or Code A, or whether or not there's new players like Ro8 who haven't even proven themselves yet. This is kind of like starting over. There's a clean slate here.
Yeah. It definitely is. And for those teams, it's the first Team League game that they have in Heart of the Swarm. And guys, if you just tuned in, one of the things that we want to point out once again is that this is a little bit of a different format than we had last season or last year. This is a best of 7 for the GSTL Pre-Season tournament, not a best of 9. So if you send a player like Ro8 out there, it means the game that he plays is a lot more important than it was last year. In the best of 9, of course, also every game counts and every game is important, but even more so in the best of 7.
Exactly. When you're playing with 2 less games on the table, every player just becomes that much more important. That's why it's important to put him out now during the preseason, I feel, instead of during the regular season. When we have the playoffs, of course, later on it's going to go back to a best of 9, but until that time it will be a best of 7.
Exactly. And also, if you're currently watching on Twitch or anywhere else, if you go to GOMTV.net, the entire GSTL Pre-Season matches are completely free in HD and EHQ, so make sure that you find your way to GOMTV.net. You can watch the games there on the Flash player. Tell your friends and tell everyone that this is basically a bit of a preview that they have for the HD quality. Also, all the VODs will be free. You can find them on GOMTV.net as well.
And let's take a look at our starting player here. This is Ragnarok, the former TSL Zerg, someone who has been, he's been fielded a few times for TSL. he's got a lot of experience training, but not very many times played in the booth.
You can see here the HOTS experience is 100. I think we have to point that out every single time we see it on screen. This is a rank that is given to the players by the coaches, so it's a little bit of a joke rank. You can just make a little bit of fun about people. We had, for example, Marine King with 22,222, which kind of significant that he always got the second place in so many tournaments where he played at. So that's not really a measure of skill. It's just basically something that the GOM offered the coaches to do. Rate your own players, give them a rank, and a lot of the coaches just use that to banter a little bit with the players.
Exactly. Let's see what we get here for Ryung. 91. So nearing 100 there. Code S player, one of the better players for Slayers back in the day in the Team League. And I think that he is a great starting choice to come out here. He's an all-around good player, doesn't really have very many glaring weaknesses.
91 might be his birth year. I don't know.
Yeah, that's also true.
Yeah, for all we know.
That's very...
That's
a good I don't know, guess. Yeah. I'm like, I don't want to use the word guess because it makes it seem like you were just guessing, but then I was like, wait a minute, you actually are, so I guess so.
I did not look up when exactly he spawned, and I don't know it by heart, so yeah, I apologize in advance if I was wrong. I probably was, but just to significant to explain to you guys what that could mean.
Alicia is looking good over there on that boost, by the way. He's lost a lot of weight.
Yeah, Alicia, by the way, he dominated in the IFPL qualifier, the Korean qualifier. He took the entire thing, and that was also a very interesting qualifier when it came down to the race distributions. We had in the round of 32, I think 8 Zerg players. We had 12 Terrans and 12 Protoss, and in only one Zerg made it into the next round, where he immediately lost. And the funny thing is, he only went into the next round because he played a ZVZ in the first round. So not a single Zerg was able to win a non-mirror match, which is of course not all too important. It's still a beta, but just to give you a little bit of an idea heading into a Zerg versus Terran.
Yeah, exactly. This is important for you to tell people because right now this matchup is strongly Terran favored. The map is Whirlwind, which is a pretty strong map for Zerg, but we saw yesterday some dismantling done by Teja on this map against his opponent Ro8, so it can be done. And I'm thinking since this game might go late, we might see mech from Ryung, and we could see some Vipers coming out.
I'm interested to see what exactly is up his sleeve. The same is true for Ragnarok. Guys, we are jumping into our first game. Axiom-Acer is up versus LGIM. We have Ryung versus Ragnarok. There's the GSTL Pre-Season with Kaldon Wolf. Go ahead and let Ken introduce our players. To the top left in red for LGIM, we have
LGIM, Ragnarok.
That's an interesting way to pronounce that, Ken.
I don't know about that. Here we have him, and of course his opponent is starting at the bottom left in blue, starting for Axiom-Acer. It is
Axiom Young.
Ryung, such a great player. This guy is definitely the favored player in this matchup. Not only because he's a Terran, but because he's just got so much experience. He's a high-level Code S player. Ragnarok was never able to really make it in the individual leagues.
And you know, going into this first match, let's talk a little bit about balance just in general. We already mentioned that there's going to be a new patch. What Blizzard did is they looked at the Hellbat once again. They already changed it a little bit since Hellbat drops gave a lot of players a huge amount of problems, and they decided, okay, listen what, we want to weaken the Hellbat drops a little bit, so we just increased the cargo size of a Hellbat from 2 to 4. Now they looked at it again and like, okay, well, the drop might be a little bit nerfed and it's weaker now, but the unit itself is still a little bit too strong. It's too readily available. It's out there just way too fast, so we have to do something about it. So they already announced that they are going to introduce a new patch, and the patch apparently is going to be that you have to research an upgrade in your tech lab at the factory, and you can research it as soon as you have your own armory.
Just to give you guys, you know, like, I was thinking about this morning. I was looking at the unit stats of the Hellbat. Just to give you guys an idea of how much damage this thing does. To non-light units, it does 19 damage AoE. That's basically the same damage. That's 1 damage less than the Marauder does to an armored unit like a Stalker. So when you talk about it fighting roaches, it fights roaches with AoE the same way a Marauder does. Obviously, its range is less, but still, I mean, just consider that damage.
What do you think, by the way, with the new the change that you already announced? Does that make the cargo increase a little bit redundant?
Yeah, I agree, but there's a lot of things like this, a lot of patches that have happened, like the non-warping in on ramps that was finally put back in the Heart of the Swarm.
You know, for me it's just so weird that you have a unit like the Hellion, and as soon as you transform it into a Hellbat, suddenly the cargo size increases. So this is one of the things that, for me personally, doesn't make a lot of sense. I would have really loved Blizzard to just go ahead and say, okay guys, we tried it this way, it didn't work out as we intended, so what we're gonna do right now is we change with the new patch the entire process of how to get the Hellbat. This also means we can change the cargo size back, because those drops will either completely disappear or at least be so late that players will be able to prepare in time.
Yeah, I actually completely agree. I hadn't even thought of that. That's a really good point. There are a lot of patch changes that don't get reverted, like pylon radius, for example, and the warping on the ramps. 4-gate problem was solved by Sentry build times and the warp gate research time in PvP, but they left the other changes there. And you know, sometimes changes stay, sometimes they go, but in this case, we don't have any gases for a Zerg player who looks like he wants to do something really weird. I didn't expect this. I thought maybe he was going to try to block Ryung's third, but he's actually going to put a hatchery outside of his third base with a queen here. Now
cancel and then go straight into another creep tumor. I really like this. He's doing this a little bit TLO style. TLO was one of the first Zerg players who actually went for the hatch cancel and then used his creep tumors to spread the creep a little bit faster.
Yeah, this is actually pretty cool. I've never seen this done on a map like this in this way. I've seen it on other maps to block thirds, but not quite like this.
I really like it a lot. I mean, this just shows that he's willing to sacrifice a few minerals for this and that he really wants to spread his creep as fast as possible. One of the things that is definitely true in this matchup now is that Zerg is kind of forced to go straight into roaches. If you don't have roaches, you have a really, really tough time fending off what a Terran player can throw against you. There have been a lot of debates out there on the forums, also on talk shows like State of the Game, where Cats and QXC as well as Atosis, they talked a lot about how this matchup is currently working, especially Cats put a lot of thought into this and came up with a lot of opinions that were well-founded, and he also accepted like the criticism that QXC threw at him. I really liked how this discussion went, so I have to...
Yeah, I watched that show as well.
I have to say kudos to JP for getting all those guys involved and having such a nice round where all the pros kind of exchange their thoughts. But you could really see that there are a lot of things that Zergs these days is forced to do. The change with the Hellbats might help a little bit. We're gonna find out very soon as Blizzard introduces it.
Yeah.
But without roaches, bottom line, in this matchup, you have a very tough time. You're taking way too many risks. So the choice here to go into roaches is one that is kind of forced.
Yeah, exactly. He basically has to do it. There's a lot of different roach builds we're seeing right now. For example, the Burrow Rush, where you try to attack with Burrow Roaches and use Burrow Micro against Terran players. That's not what we're seeing now, but that's become quite common as well. Putting aggression on against a Terran player rather than trying to defend. And what we're seeing from Ryung right now is basically standard Wings of Liberty play. He's going into double upgrades, he's getting his stim out, he's going to have Medivacs very soon, he's using the Hellions to control the map.
The Burrow upgrade that you mentioned is actually a really, really good point. I like this a lot. This is one of the few things that a Zerg player can do in the early game. A lot of people that have been watching out of the Swarm matches, especially in Zerg matchups, have been criticizing a bit that the players don't utilize those new units that you have. The big problem that you have as a Zerg player these days is that your new Heart of the Swarm units are all lair-tech. So it's a little bit more complicated for you to get them out into the game, whereas as a Protoss, you go for the Mothership Core right away. As a Terran player, utilizing Reapers early on, you have the Hellbats. You have all these things that you can do. As a Zerg, you have these tiny things in the early game, and what you mentioned, the Burrow is one of those. So utilizing that is actually pretty cool. And what Lucky did and other players, I really love this. This just shows a little bit of creativity and just them toying around with the options that they now have.
Exactly. It's really, really cool. Previously, that Burrow type of play would not be possible because of the lair tech requirement. Now, we're having 3 bunkers go down for Ryung because he sees that there's a large roach force out there. He doesn't know whether it's going to be used as an attack or if it's going to be used just purely defensively, as we talked about before. So he has to make these bunkers right now because he went pretty greedy on trying to tech with the double E-base, taking a third Commander, adding all his add-ons. So he doesn't have a lot of army out just yet, so he has to leave these SCVs here repairing for a little bit longer.
And talking about being a little bit greedy or just playstyle in general, we have now 4 bases for Ragnarok coming up. And also, look at this minimap. 10 minutes into the game and his creep spread is crazy. This is really the power of a hatch cancel and the queen. Also, this dedication to the creep tumors. And Ryang was supply locked here a little bit and now added additional supply depots, so that's not going to be a problem for a long time. But we have a bit of a push here for our LGM player. Ragnarok is on the move, trying to take out those few mules that he can see at the third base.
I really like what Ryang is doing at his third, by the way. A lot of people would not do this, but he lands only mules at his third base for a little while without transferring any SCVs, just in case he just has to lift and get out, because then he doesn't lose anything. Yeah, he loses the mules that he dropped, but at the very least, he can still mine from a third base.
You know, I actually don't like this point that people tend to do this. Dropping this many mules at the third. I mean, it makes sense if you think about it. What is your goal? Your goal is you want to mine from the latest base that you took as much as possible, because this is the first base that's going to be attacked. So if you then mine all those mineral patches, it means you will still have a few patches at your natural and maybe even in your main base, which is the safer income for you. But without any defensive structures, no siege tank, no bunker, no marines, no nothing, going straight into dropping, let's say, 3 mules, 5 mules, sometimes even more, this just asks for your opponent to attack you at exactly this point, and then suddenly all those mules are wasted energy.
Yeah, that's very true. And I think there's definitely a balance to be had. You know, mine a few extra mules over there. He was starting SCV production, he had to cancel it, but right now we have Hydras coming out as a composition for Ragnarok, which is not something that you'd see in Wings of Liberty, especially not in this matchup quite like this, because there was no speed upgrade. The speed upgrade is finishing up right now. He's getting 2-2 as well, which is going to finish up actually pretty well aligned with Ryang. So we're going to see Hydras how they fare in this matchup right now.
Hydraulics are actually really, really good, as long as you don't have siege tanks against you. So usually what you struggle with as a Zerg player if you go up against a Terran is that he adds the siege tanks into his composition and they can do so much damage against Hydralisks. So if a Terran player is low on siege tanks, then you can do a lot with the Ro8 and Hydralisk composition. And this is exactly what he tries to do, but he has to back off here a bit. Yeah. What I'm really curious to see is if we might actually, in a late game scenario, now finally see the Viper. I would love to see Abduct, and also, of course, Blinding Cloud against the Siege.
I think that's definitely something that we're going to start to see, because once you use that Blinding Cloud, it makes the Terran player so much more uncomfortable with fighting with your Hydra army. It allows you to close distance, do that real damage the Hydras can offer, even against Siege tanks. And the Vipers abducting the tanks out of the way is going to be something that's a big pain in the neck for Ryang to deal with as well. And since he has the flexibility right now where he has map control, his creep spread is excellent, I feel like Ragnarok certainly could produce a few Vipers here.
Now we have this Medivac play coming into the game, and this is of course really important. I feel we are going to talk about this a lot later on. Now things are a little bit more heated up, so maybe in the next game. But with those afterburners, with the boosters, you can definitely do a lot of damage, and this is really a big problem in a lot of matchups. I feel especially Protoss is struggling quite a bit dealing with those Medivacs, because even if you have turrets, let's talk about a TVT, even if you have missile turrets set up, they don't do anything anymore. Suddenly it's just gonna be the Wind Diesel thrusters and the Medivac is out of range and is in the middle of your main base. So you can really do a lot with these things.
Yeah, they're quite useful. You know, and
there we go.
There's the Vipers. He starts to use that. In this case, the ability is called Consume, just like in Broodor, attacking the hatchery. You can see the cost, 100 minerals, 200 gas, it's 3 supply, and once you have Hive Tech, you can just make them. You don't require any additional buildings.
It's really one of those units where you usually have... You invest a lot of gas, so it's a commitment, but they can be really strong, and especially with Hydralisks, this is where they start to shine. If you have a Roach Hydra composition and you add Vipers into the equation, you can do so much more. This is exactly what he's trying to do. Here we go, the first few tanks. He's going for the Blinding Cloud, and here comes the army.
Yeah, the Hydra's doing some real damage here. The crowd's going pretty crazy right now. The Hydra's maybe pushed back, but it's going to take a little bit longer, and he has time to remax now while he trades against this army.
Yeah, he's trying to trade here. He's still ahead in overall supply. I really like this move. Ryang was not prepared for it. He was not looking at where the Vipers come in.
Yeah, he came from a great angle. He did lose 2 of his Vipers. He's remaking 3 right now.
And here we go again, trying to move his way into the realm of the Zerg player, but Ro8 and Hydralisk are streaming across the map straight towards the tanks, trying to chase them back.
Yeah, and the Hydras are doing a lot of good damage. Siege tanks do a lot of damage to Hydras, but they're light units, so it doesn't do as much as it would against, say, a Ro8. So to have those Hydras come in at the back like that did a lot for Ragnarok in that last engagement.
And just talk about Ryang a little bit. Look at his upgrades. He's going to 3-3. His macro is really good here. His upgrades are going to be great. The same is true for Ragnarok, though. Both these players are really emphasizing the upgrades a lot. But I feel for Ryang, this is even a little bit more important. With Medivac support, these units are just so strong. But look at the flank for Ragnarok. He's trying to go for a sandwich.
He's going to go for it. Now attacking both sides once more. The Hydra's already closed the distance here on these siege tanks. And he is going to crush this army. Blinding Cloud on the ramp. He can't go up there. And those Hydras at the back clean up everything. Even the Medivacs need to boost to get out of here. They're going to go down to the Hydras.
They try to escape again, but the Hydralisks are now going in. Once again, the Afterburners being used to escape. And you know, I feel with the with the Viper now in the game, Ryang has to counter them. He needs to build something to deal with those guys.
I would also like to see him have some Hellbats in his composition against the Hydras. They do bonus damage to light. It's very difficult, of course, for them to close the distance on the Hydras because the Hydras have a ton of range, unlike the Hellbats. But with the Medivacs and with the support of the Marauders and the Marines there, I think he could definitely add a few in. He's getting the Drilling Claws upgrade for the Widow Mine. I don't think I've ever seen this research before. This is going to make it so that he can put Widow Mines on the map. They're going to burrow twice as fast, and he can use some map control with those.
That's really interesting. I haven't seen this in a long time. Here we go again. Moving in. Ragnarok is on the hunt. Is he going for another Blinding Cloud? Those Vipers are out of range right now. There are two siege tanks on the high ground. Here come the SCVs.
Ryang may just die here. I mean, he just does not have a lot of units. The Hydras do tons of damage to SCVs, and he's on the run. He's running up that ramp. Right now, he's only got 6 Marines and 4 Marauders. Yeah, he has 7 Medivacs, but that's not too useful. We don't have units underneath them.
And here comes the Zerg player now moving in with everything that he has. 3-3 is completed. Ryang is struggling here. 200 supply for Ragnarok. Ryang is on 100. His whole production line is now suddenly being camped by Ro8's Hydralisks.
Yeah, the Hydra's taken out the last of these units. The Medivac's now falling as well. And I feel he could even bring his Vipers in at this point. There's nothing to worry about. The rally across the map is just going to be eventually too much for him. He has an Ultralisk Cavern he can use if he wants to, but right now this composition just makes much more sense. GG.
1-0, Ragnarok takes victory over Ryang. You know, looking at this game, I feel the one thing that we didn't really see from Ryang was any kind of aggression.
Yeah, he was a little bit passive in the early game because he was playing a little bit greedy. And then all the roaches that Ragnarok showed, which he never used, was a great fake. Really kept Ryang on the defensive, I feel.
We didn't see any drops or anything like it, so he didn't try to go for a very aggressive build, for anything where he could use those afterburners to his advantage, trying to pressure the Zerg and keep him low. So Ragnarok just took all the time that he had and spread creep the entire map, went into a double expansion from his 2 bases, and it looked really safe what he played there.
Yeah, it's like once the Vipers were out, all he did was take safe engagements with his flanks, and then he just won fight after fight. There was never a situation where he denied his opponent's base or killed a lot of SCVs early. He just played a straight-up macro game, made a good composition, and then crushed Ryang's army with it 2 times, and then it was over.
Ryang didn't have anything against those Vipers. He didn't have Vikings.
No Vikings.
He didn't have anything
no Ghosts.
that could deal with them.
Ghosts even could be useful in this case to EMP them.
You have a couple of options of what you can do, but if you don't counter the Vipers, they're really expensive. They're a commitment to gas, as we pointed out, but if you don't do anything against them and they are able to flank you, then your tanks don't do anything in the engagement. And with the composition that Ragnarok went for, it is so crucial to have the tanks in the picture. Without the tanks, you are lost. You can't do anything against this Zerg composition.
Yeah, the Hydras do damage on the back, the Roaches do the tanking at the front against all the bio forces, and then eventually you just run out of steam. Even with the healing power of the Medivacs, the Marines don't have very many hit points. The Marauders aren't very good against Hydralisks.
Exactly.
And that's what we saw there.
So we have now LGIM taking lead with a 1-0. Ragnarok is still in the game. We need a new player, and Axiom-Acer has to decide who is going to be next. I feel the first game was actually like really interesting. We had a couple of things that we didn't see just yet in the GSTL Pre-Season matches. We had the Viper now.
We had a Zerg beating a Terran. We haven't seen that yet so far either.
Yeah, that too. But yeah, we had the Viper now in as a new unit. Ryang struggled a little bit against the composition. I'm interested to see what exactly we're going to see from Axiom-Acer.
Yeah, I'm excited as well. I think I would not be surprised to see Alicia come out now.
Yeah, Alicia did really well in the IAPL Korean qualifier. We talked about this already a little bit. He dominated. Could also see another Terran
Looks
player.
like Hart is standing up. It's going to be him.
You know, I can completely understand the decision. If you think about what kind of timings Terran has these days against Zerg, they're really strong, and Hart was always a player who likes to go for aggression.
Yeah, he's a very aggressive player, oftentimes even using cheese and all-ins in his build orders.
I feel that this is really one of those scenarios where we have Hart just going for a really, really strong push. I would be surprised to see him go into a late game scenario. A 1-base, 2-base push is what I would expect here, and I can completely understand this decision. I think it's a great decision to make.
By the way, I want to say I really like the personality that's added to the Axiom jerseys with the IDs, the players' IDs on the front. I really like that.
But guys, before we jump into our game between Hart and Ragnarok, we have a 5-minute break. As soon as we are back, we will continue with the GSTL Pre-Season match between Axiom-Acer and LGIM. Get yourself a coffee, get yourself a beer, depending on where exactly you live and what time it is. We'll see you in a few. Bye-bye.